Leadership Series here at the UN System Staff College headquarters in Turin, Italy. Before I introduce our wonderful panel, I have to say that unfortunately our special guest, the Chief of Staff of the UN Secretary General, Ambassador Courtney Rothray, could not be here because he had a last-minute change of schedule. He's on his way to Turin, but unfortunately not for this particular event. Now, let me quickly introduce our distinguished panelists to all of you. Aisha Mindadou, former United Nations Special Representative in Côte d'Ivoire, former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Niger. Lori Solpezio, Executive Director, Conscious Leadership Academy, University of San Diego. Paolo Benanti, Professor of Ethics of Technology, Digital Technology and AI, Pontifical Gregorian University, and a member of the UN Secretary General Advisory Council on Artificial Intelligence. Pierluigi Dalpino, Senior Regional Director, Microsoft Western Europe. This event will be moderated by Dr. Gabriel Segre, the Director of the Segre Foundation and a former colleague and friend of the Staff College. Now, a little bit about the topic. We know that these days, artificial intelligence is very much of a hot topic that has been discussed from various angles. Now, today, we are going to also focus our discussion on artificial intelligence, but its very specific connection to the topic and issue of leadership. As you already know, the world is grappling with myriad of interconnected, very serious challenges spanning from environmental crisis to socioeconomic disparities. Geopolitical tensions and conflict persist, while global migration and social injustices underline the urgency of public leadership. In the midst of all these intricacies, generative AI comes to the fore. Like any technology, artificial intelligence can be taken and used either to help solve or aggravate our problems. We must learn how to navigate through this very uncharted waters of technological revolution. The conversation we will have today aims to contribute to this very specific goal. We will also explore the role of leadership, the elements of which will prove dispensable to understand, interpret, and address the challenges presented by AI. To do so, we choose to bring together very different perspectives by engaging with some of the most renowned experts in the field. We hope that today's session will be a space for advancing questions and ideas for the benefit of all. That is the main objective of the UN System Staff College Thought Leadership Series. So I encourage all to have a very open and frank conversation, and the more provocative, the better it is. Having said this, I give the floor to Gabriel. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Jafar, and it's a pleasure to be here, moderating this wonderful panel with 4 very important and very thoughtful people with different perspectives that will allow us to advance questions. And I think if we get out of this conversation with more questions and answers, we have done our job, because nowadays we are working with such a intricate, complicated, complex challenge that easy questions are not going to be the right ones. So we try to advance our understanding by posing questions. So as Jafar said, this conversation is going to be more about leadership rather than AI in itself. AI, everybody is talking about AI in terms of scenario making, understanding what is going to be the future, what the new edge of AI innovation will be, and so on. Today we won't do that. We will speak about the people more than the technology, or rather how the people are embracing or are confronted by this technology. But of course, in order to do that, we need to set a little bit the frame. We need to set the stage. And the first question, the first round of reflections that I would like to ask our panelists to join me to have is about the challenge, about the personal and professional perspective that they have when they're reading the impact of AI in the world around us, in our world. So let me start with Paolo Benanti, who is a world-renowned expert of ethics of artificial intelligence, and he has that special position of knowing about the technology and knowing about the philosophy behind the technology, which not so many have. So, Paolo, if you can help us get a little bit the stage, the frame of the stage that we are talking about. What is the challenge, in your view, in the next 6-7 minutes? Can you give us a little bit of a sense of what is the emerging challenge for the future when we're talking about AI?
Gabriele De Rol, I'm really thrilled and honored to be part of this conversation. I'm really thankful for all the opportunity that I could have this evening. Well, actually, when you talk about technology, you are talking to a strange thing about human beings. You know, we can imagine that we are talking simple about tools. And someone could also argue that there is no tools that cannot become a weapon. And so we are talking about some of the most powerful invention to help the other or to kill the other. Well, but actually, I have to propose another lecture of the tools to go in straight to what AI could be in the next future. Well, I would like to be back to the Greek root of mythology when we have the classic question that the enigma that the Sphinx make to Oedip. Well, the Sphinx asks to Oedip, who is that being that in the morning walk with 4 legs, in the midday walks with 2 legs, in the evening walks with 3 legs? Well, actually, the answer was given during the myth was the human beings. When we are kids, we walk on 4 legs. When we are adult, we walk on 2 legs. And when we are old, we walk with 3 legs because we walk on 2 legs plus a stick. Well, could be a lot of different interpretation of this kind of enigmas, but I would like to tell you that from the oldest roots of our reflection, we are using technology, the sticks, to tell something about the human beings. And this is the core point of the challenge of the future. Could the next wave of technology, the present wave of technology, the present wave of artificial intelligence be incorporated, be something of ourself, that it's part of ourself and not anymore in some way distinguished by us? Well, before arriving to AI, we have to recognize that we use technology in that way such more before. Actually, language, books, and culture are form of technology, oral or written technology that allow us to write and to shape our identity. Every time that I access to a such kind of technology, I can recognize the heritage of people that lived before me, and I can be myself part of the heritage for the people that will live after myself. Well, now we have a form of technology, generative AI, as we heard in the introduction, that for the first time is not only able to give to a robot the ability to manipulate objects, or to give a camera the ability to recognize something, but could be the producer of the most powerful object that shape our culture, language and images. And so we can have at this point two directions, or probably the real scenario will be a mixing one of these two directions. We can use this form of technology to give the right dignity to every form of culture ever existed in the history, ever existed in every place on the face of the earth. We are facing the moment in which every human beings, woman and man, can simply exist in their dignity because there is a place in which their uniqueness will be taken care and make it accessible and shareable to everyone else. Or we can have a new operative system that will shape our culture, that will shape our relationship. We could have the perfect tool to shape the enemy, to allow ourselves to imagine someone else as the perfect enemy that has to be destroyed to keep ourselves alive. So the real problem here, the real challenge, is that this new wave of technology is something that we in some way embody it, because our language, our story, our dream, our fears is everything made by images and words. So because AI is able to be the best companion, we can use it to save all the dream, all the hopes, all the things that move inside the human beings, help us to have a positive leadership, really inclusive, really general, really global, or we could use it to simply select what is deserved to remain as the mainstream and cut off the rest of the possibility of the human beings. So I don't want to go further in that direction. For me, it's enough to put at the center the idea that technology is something that we can embody, and language and books and writing language, it's one of the most powerful form of that technology. Now the machine is not only something that is used to store or transmit information, the machine could be used to create such things, and machine could enhance our life or hack the way in which we build the most powerful way to stay together, that is democracy.
Thank you so much, Paolo. When I said set the stage, I was imagining you going big, and you did. And thank you so much, because this allows us to go at the very roots of what leadership is. But we're going to get there in a moment. Let's stay more on the challenge. And I would like to ask Pierluigi to intervene here, because Paolo set the frame by saying, okay, we have different directions that we can take. And at the end of the day, it's our choice somehow. But we know that big corporations and let's say the private sector is leading those choices, because they're leading somewhat the evolution and the development of the technology itself. So you are not just a very thoughtful leader, but you are also working in one of these leading institutions, which is Microsoft. So I would like to ask you, how do you see the challenge in terms of the relationship between what is the role of the private sector, the companies that are developing this, and the public sector and the rest of the society? How do we understand and envisage the governance of this new technology coming over to us? Over to you for the next 6-7 minutes, as long as you want, please. Yeah.
Thanks, Gabriele, and I'm glad to be here. And it really thanks to the UN System Staff College and to the other panelists who are with us today. Well, let me start. Where are we? We are witnessing an inflection point of an unprecedented technological growth. Before we were talking about innovation in decades. That's what we were used to. Now we are just talking about innovation through weeks or months. And so there are some peculiar characteristics among many others. But definitely one of the most important is the velocity, is the speed. It's how this technology, and we are just talking about in a year of the announcement of ChatGPT to the public, it's running. It's so hard to get the same pace. The second paradigm that changed really much, a lot, is the man-machine relationship interaction. That's changed. We've been working on the natural user interfaces for years, but now we see it alive. Now we have a human technology that speaks to us. Let's remind that it's us that we are making prompts, that we're asking the machine to respond. It's not the contrary. But it talks in our language, and the relationship is way more familiar. But at the same time, we have huge new opportunities. That's what we are experiencing, bringing OpenAI, ChatGPT in the market, with the new opportunities for enterprise, for public administration, for people at large in terms of productivity, which is one of the main and the essence of how you measure the real impact of technologies of today. Do we really need this technology? We have a reason. Most of the time for the challenges is the same technology that comes on here. And we have huge issues as of today. We have what we call the digital debt. What it means is that it's very hard today to follow this pace of innovation, the amount of technology that's surrounding us. Think about in daily work, how many mails, messages, conference call, communication originated by different technologies, social networks. We never have time, to follow all this huge amount, and that's what we call the digital debt. Generative AI comes and help. What we call and what we presented as the co-pilot. We've done a research with 31,000 respondents in more than 31 countries, and we announced it in the last release in November 2023, so a month ago, which is the World Trend Index, which says that 77% using Copilot today they don't want to go back. They don't want to go back in working in the same way they were doing a few months before. This is the degree of satisfaction, say. The 70% declare that they are definitely more productive. They are gaining almost 30% of their time thanks to the usage of the generative AI. And it's also very important that the 72% of the respondents declare that how helped them to generate new ideas and get rid of the routine work that they were used to do. Now, this is beautiful, but definitely if we want to benefit with all this, we need the new governance. We need to govern AI. We need some new international legislation and norms, and to have a responsible AI approach. When I say responsible AI approach, it means that we don't need never to ask what the computers or algorithms can do. This is the main questions as happened today. Everybody are asking what ChatGPT, what generative AI can do, but we need to decide what they need to do, what they must do. Definitely, we have this risk-based approach, which is on top of our mind. This is essential in how we take decision. We need to put forward this risk-based approach and play in advance and anticipate the risk. But at the same time, we need to really build some guardrails so that generative AI remain at the service of human beings. The usage of generative AI is not to replace the human beings. It's to enrich their experience. That's the reason why we called Copilot. But as it was the main definition of AI is technology to advance human creativity. That's what it means. But at the end, the human centricity, the centric vision, and the ethical decision are at the core of any decision-making process, whether you are a leader, whether you're working with this technology. And definitely we need these new rules, new standards, new legislation. We need to reach that through a multi-stakeholders governance, definitely. In international cooperation, the only way to do it. This is even more global than what we discuss as of today in the digital sector. And is what we call democratizing AI, which means you must not leave anyone behind that. And use this technology to be inclusive, not discriminatory, as much as for the common good, or let me say for the humanity. There are some ideas that we anticipate and we are currently discussing in every forum, international one, in the White House commitments, as much as we've done in every country, in every nation that is currently debating. And we anticipate 5 of these that I just try to mention very, very fast. One is what we announced as the safety break. Safety is at the core of the usage of AI. Safety and security. And safety break is that we need to determine a time when we need to stop if we see that the effects of this technology are unpredictable or not for good. And as well as we take the elevator or we drive a car, we have a break. We have something that we can take and be active in that, or push the button in the elevator, and something that is mechanical, but we can stop. And we need to have this stop button, if you allow me to say it like this, that we can stop the progress of this algorithm. Then the need of the cybersecurity norms. This is something that in US it's pretty ahead with the NIST framework, so the National Institute of Science and Technology, which are the international standards on the risk-based approach. And then the third one is the new legal framework reflecting the different actors. Because when we think about AI or generative AI, we always think about the developers. But here we have users, we have deployers, and we have developers. And we have a different level of liabilities, but we have some responsibility that each actor needs to take. The fourth one is to promote transparency and the free access, that's what we think, to academics. That should be for free, for learning and for academics, for research. And the ultimate, last one I would say, is to create the public-private partnership to face some of the global and social challenges. Think about sustainability, climate change. You can think about one of the issues that is very common to Italy and Japan, for example, which is the aging society. We know already that in 10, 20 years, we're going to have a shortage and reduction of the workforce. We know the last release for Italy is in 2040, we're going to have 3.4 million of workers less than. Because we're talking about aging factor. And generative AI or AI, can come and help because of prediction, but it help us and it help humans to take the right decision as government leaders, to take the right decision where we need to invest for the workers and the leakage of workers that we're going to have tomorrow. And let me stop here.
Sure. Thank you, Pierre. Thank you so much. This is very useful because you gave the large picture again, and then when it comes to leadership, the question is, are we actually doing that or not? But it's the question that we're coming to in a moment. But let me go now to Aisha too. Aisha, we heard from Pierre how, for example, there is a question of security, there is a question of people having to understand what is the role of generative AI in terms of not taking the place of human beings, but accompanying human being in the work and in the evolution of their life. But we also have a question of access. We also have a question of digital divide. Not everybody has the problem of, oh, wow, AI is going to take my job. Some people don't even have access to AI. And I believe that without generalization, you know that context better than others. So I would like to hear your point of view on the relevance of AI today in the context of the global south, in the context of the developing world, in the context of the areas that you, with your expertise, are working into and the communities. Over to you.
Thank you, Gabriele. Thank you very much, and I'm honored to be part of this conversation. So you remember when we were discussing about my participation to this panel, I was just wondering why I could be on the panel, because I'm not an expert of artificial intelligence. But the question you asked with regard to the relevance of the AI in the global south, particularly in Africa, I would say that it is largely accepted that AI offers significant opportunities for the African continent, for example. We, of course, don't know yet how it will affect existing jobs or what would be the security concerns. But we can already see that Africa has the most to gain on it. But the most to gain means that we have to overcome the challenges. The challenges, you talk about them, challenges of access. Because at the beginning of this conversation, I was saying that I would probably face the internet access problem, because in our countries, we don't even have a stable internet connection. I'm not sure we would go up till the end of this conversation without any cut of internet, of electric power, and so on. And you know very well that without internet, without electric power, you cannot have access to AI. So I think with regard to Global South, we really, it is very important to have it, because it will help fighting corruption, it will help promoting the development, it will help in many areas. But the challenges are so big that at the end of the day, I really I'm afraid that we will be in the same situation as all other global issues where the global south is left aside. A few days ago, I was walking in the street of Singapore. So my attention was drawn to a kind of medium-sized black box, about half a meter high and 40 centimeter wide. It had wheels. So it was moving slowly up and down on the pavement, stopping occasionally. So intrigued, I asked someone what it was. So he told me that was a device that monitored whether cars are parked properly, and if not, this same device would issue parking tickets. So you can imagine really my surprise, because I thought myself, this is an effective way of solving the problem, for example, of corruption of traffic wardens in some countries, mainly in the global south, where you can hand over a banknote and get away with a ticket. So those are the kind of utilization of AI that would be very, very helpful for the global south. Increasing development, promoting democracy, fighting against corruption, etc. So now with regard to my personal experience, Peter spoke about the implication of AI in our day-to-day work. You know, it is going from ChatGPT, he told it, and also all the facility we have in accessing even our bank account from our sofa. It is amazing. And you can buy, you know, it whatever you want from your sofa, those issues of binge watching, etc. But bringing it back to my leadership experience, when really I was occupying all those important positions, AI didn't exist at that time. It wasn't as developed as it is now. So when I reflect and I put myself in the environment, in today's environment, so I know that AI would have eased my life as leader. For example, for those all those who know how UN works, about the bureaucracy of the UN, about the huge amount of documents you have to write off to read. So I would be happy to have it because it could be a great solution. I was spending almost 60% of my time working on reports and documents according to a predefined template. I think that using AI could have freed more time for strategic thinking. So I also thought about it with regard to human resource management, you know, writing job description, optimizing people's career, etc., etc. I'm not going to really say a lot on this. Everyone knows it. But I fully agree that AI cannot replace human completely. For example, my competence is conflict mediation when it comes to building consensus, when it comes to complex negotiation, notably by building consensus, helping conflicting parties understand their shared interests, all the fields where the human-centric approach is vital. This, I don't think AI could replace it. So I will stop here, and if it needs be, I can jump in again and share additional thoughts about this. Thank you.
We sure hope you will, and we'll do that in a moment. But thank you very much, Aisha, for that. I think that giving also the empirical sense of what is the challenge that we have in front of us is extremely useful. And but now let me, to close this first round of debate, I wanted to go to Lori Sulpizer. Lori, you are an expert of leadership, and you have this lens of understanding of leadership, which is understanding the nature of a huge, complex, adaptive challenges that come in to change lives, to change the way we live, we work, we relate to each other, the way we understand the world around us. Definitely, from what we heard, starting from Paolo and his ethical dilemmas or ethical pivotal questions, coming to Aisha's example, we do have in front of us an adaptive challenge. But let me ask your help in terms of the framing of that challenge. How would you, after all you have heard, and of course, tapping on your experience, what is exactly that we have to deal with, not so much from the AI or the technology point of view, but when it comes to the people? Because that's the question for the leadership. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. And I echo my colleagues here about being grateful to be part of this conversation. And I think for framing, adaptive leadership is a leadership approach that looks at leadership as a practice that addresses problems that don't have a clear answer. And I think sometimes when we think of leaders and leadership, we think of these folks who have all the answers and are solving these problems, making quick decisions. And the unfortunate thing is sometimes that is how leadership is practiced. And adaptive leadership invites us into the space to say we don't know the answer, and we have to deal with more nuanced and complicated aspects of problems and people. And so as I'm listening to everybody, I'm thinking about some of the key parts of adaptive leadership, which are things like get to the balcony, because we often are so locked in our own little view that we don't see everything around us and all the other stakeholders and all the other issues. Things like identify the adaptive challenge, right? What really is the problem that we're trying to solve? Because often we go for the quickest, easiest, lowest hanging fruit, money making, whatever that problem, and we're missing the real problem. We haven't even identified that. And so we find ourselves facing the same kind of challenges over and over, partially because we haven't addressed the actual problem, because we haven't taken the time to slow down and identify it. Things like orchestrate conflict is part of adaptive leadership. Give the work back to the people. And as Aicha too is saying, protect the voices of leadership from below. As she was speaking about corruption within Africa and access, in my world, we're talking about, Ivy League students not using ChatGPT to cheat on their exams. And she's talking about, corruption and access to internet. I mean, it's, we need to hear all voices of all people as we look to move through issues of AI. And what strikes me, I think, if I think about one of the key adaptive challenges from a human perspective, we as humans, I think, are very defined by our doing, right? We are status driven. We achieve, especially leadership, certain models of leadership, and the way that our identity and our worth is very much by what we achieve and what we do in life. And all of a sudden, I think there's fear and anxiety around this idea that, well, adaptive leaders, AI is going to take our jobs, and artificial intelligence and machines, we're not going to have anything to do as humans anymore. They're going to take us over. And I think the big adaptive challenge, when we think about something as, Paolo says, can kind of do what humans do, is what does it mean to be human? Right? What does it mean to be a human being if there's a machine that can be us? And I think that's what we're grappling with at the core level. And the interesting thing is I was thinking about this framing, which is, a lot of what I do with my work is get leaders to slow down and to reflect and to get into their presence and to try to find a way of being. And there's always this play on words, we are human beings, not human doings. However, we often are stuck in the doing. And I think what really we're challenged to do in the opportunity with AI is to think about, what does it mean to be a human being? And what's the loss that we are afraid of if some of these other jobs and tasks and operational things that we're used to doing can all of a sudden be done by machines? But instead of it being a bad thing, what an opportunity for us. Because like Aisha has also said, how many of our jobs are full of bureaucracy where we're spending 50, 60% of our time doing stuff that are technical, unimportant, not the critical issues, not the adaptive challenges. And what if we would allow ourselves to step into some of those tasks that require the emotions and conflict management and interpersonal relations, the things that, frankly, I don't think AI is ever going to be able to do. But we first have to grapple with that loss, right? And as I hear everybody speaking, it makes me think about the true act of leadership is raising difficult questions and being willing to have conversations to get to those answers. Like, what would it look like to give right dignity to all cultures? Right? What would that look like? Can we understand that? What does responsible AI look like and feel like? And have we slowed down enough to really explore that? And as everybody says, this thing is moving fast, fast, fast. That was the whole, right? The whole recent dilemma with ChatGPT and all this stuff, is that it's moving at such a pace. But how can leadership slow down within the speed that AI is moving to be able to have these conversations and make sure that we know the problem we're trying to solve and make sure we are giving the work back to the people and protecting the voices of leadership from below and orchestrating conflict and not just moving right on by? And so I think when we think about adaptive leadership and the work of leadership within what everybody shared, there's anxieties, there's loss, there's grief and sadness, there's change. I mean, all these things are part of that human process. And that is the work of leadership. And the challenge is going to be for those folks at the top making the big decisions, to slow down and bring that leadership practice, that adaptive leadership practice, into kind of their day-to-day, so that we can make these smart decisions and do this wisely and do this with a human perspective and do this kind of holding the tenderness and the fragility that we're all facing when we think about, oh, am I going to lose my job in 10 years? Is my job, are we even going to need leaders in 10 years? Of course we are, right? Of course we are. But how do we make the space to have the conversation around what is that next opportunity for where we could be? And where's the grief from the loss of where we are today? Because it's going to look very different. And I think that's what leadership can provide. That's the practice.
And thank you very much, Laurie, because you helped us exactly frame the leadership question, which is our next big question today. So what practices, what actions in terms of leadership work can we do in order to target the objectives that Laurie has just framed? I think that is part of the question. So I would like to ask, again, all of you, do you agree that this is the kind of work that we're doing, that we have to do? And how do we do that? Let me start this time maybe from Pierluigi. You were talking about the speed and the fact that we have to be able to stop. But perhaps from what Laurie is saying, it's not just a matter of facing up and stopping. It's about moving it in the direction that allows people not to feel outside of the conversation, and somewhat that some few actors are doing all the work, are the only actors on the stage, while everybody else is just watching what's happening. So that is a leadership question for sure. So I wonder, from your point of view, how do we address that? Are we actually addressing that in any way? Is it happening or not right now?
That's for the question. I think also listening to Laurie, which I totally agree, especially on this bottom-up approach, this more inclusive approach. I think we are not doing that so far. Again, for the speed of the technology, for many reasons, we are not used, to have this kind of relationship with the machine as of today. But if the success leaders are usually those ones who, keep learning, adapting, and growing, that's what we always keep saying. I think now it's more about embracing the change. Try to make the change. Somehow, we live in an era of many uncertainties, fortunately. We look around us and, wherever we look at, there's something happening which is not good. And we tend, to stay in our comfort zone. Now we have this, technology, not just the technology, but it's coming into our life. And we shouldn't have this passive approach or just waiting for, but just start embracing that. And what I expect from leaders is how to implement that at the ethical point, at the ethical level. The leader should be the first one, to deploy or to start using this technology at all levels, but including, with this inclusive approach, with this bottom-up approach, but leading this change, having the curiosity to do things differently, or probably do the same stuff in a different way, or completely new things. Especially in conservative countries, we're not used to it. We just try to keep things doing in the same way. This is where technology in general, AI, or what's going to be the next future adventure and development in AI or technology development will be. But I think this is the kind of approach. And if 220,000 employees, have been following in Microsoft this adventure, not just for the economic interest, because the leaders at our top level embraces ethically and decided to bring all these ethical principles into products and to take some hard decisions. When we decided that facial recognition was something that we should remove for the market, that's what we did. But so leaders need to, take that path and at the same time implement some policies in the organization that do not discriminate or imposing this technology to anybody if you want to be inclusive. So, I mean, you can slowly start working on with this technology, but at the same time, it's not discriminatory if you're not using that. This is what we are experiencing the past 4 months, but it's already available. We have in our systems. We have total respect for who's using yes or not, and we're just learning from each other. But there's no any decision at the company level that we need to use it and how to use it. It's more an experience based. It's all new for us as well. The last point is more in acting responsibly is investing in skills and competence, because I mean, this is what we all need. And from organization, from leaders, I would expect more and more to see them investing in my competence, whether they're digital, organizational, leadership, but definitely we need these digital skills because we're lucky. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Phil. Paolo, let me get to you on what Phil said, and also back to what Aisha was saying. I mean, okay, we have this large challenge. We framed it. Now the work is to do the leadership work, to accompany people. We heard like Pierre saying how, for example, the companies, other actors are helping governments and are listening to governments, listening to institutional leaderships and so on, what to do and how to move on. And this conversation is ongoing all the time. And yet we hear about the difficulties of access of Aisha too. What is your point of view? You coming in with such a strong humanistic angle. What do you see the leadership work being urgent today when it comes to responding to the fears, but not just the fears, also not missing out the opportunities and being able to understand where to stop and where to go?
Thank you, Gabriele. It's a really deep and important question, and I don't know if I have the ability to give a full, well-shaped answer. But I would like also to thank the other speakers because they was really insightful and can help, also my role in talking about AI and ethics. Well, coming back to the human side of the problem, as you said before, the first thing is, okay, technology is fast. AI allow us to be speediest, but the real leadership process are slow. Is something that actually is slow as a culture, is slow to develop and grow. So the problem is not simple to adapt ourselves to what technology is pinging on us, but to adapt technology to what of the most important trait of our organization and culture we have. Probably in the age of social network, we already saw something that is not so well calibrated, because social networks disrupted information technology and disrupted the way in which people make a public opinion on fact. And we saw, especially in some country in which the presence of the social network was so aggressive, that democratic tissues of the country was damaged, and also the leadership was really transformed by the presence of that social network. Some wave of election around the world show us that AI could be amplify this kind of phenomenon. And we will move from the persuasion, that is the really virtues of a leader, so being able to show to the other people the reasoning behind some kind of perspective, to manipulation. And manipulation is actually the real negation of leadership. You can have a short consensus, you can have a shock wave of consensus in the public sphere, but actually it's much, much easier that is against something or against someone and is not able to build a consensus, to build something new, to build a common goods that could be shared among people and among communities. So the challenge is everything here. To not let the technology ping on us, but to shape our relationship to technology to allow the human beings to flourish. I'm talking now in a really general and broad perspective, and Aisha probably know very well that applying to the real factor is, it's much more an art than not a job, because you have to keep every piece, every man, every woman, every feeling, and this is the passion that has to be in the heart of the leader. But, my side, the guardrail that was quoted before by Pierluigi, are made also by these things to make the technology and its speed compatible with the human functioning of culture.
Let me go to Aisha on that exactly then, because Paolo just said it's easier said than done, of course, and you know what it means to come in and deal with losses, deal with fears, deal with the situation of uncertainty, which is something that we have described. It's part of the challenge of AI. So from the leadership point of view, how do you see that process? How do you see that practice of coming towards the people and embracing those fears, those losses, those uncertainty? What can we learn from other situations that maybe we can apply in the case of AI? You are on mute, Aisha. You need to activate your mic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So I really like Lori's idea of leader on the balcony. It is very important because key leadership qualities like adaptabilities, foresight, and ability to forge common purpose are vital in dealing with this issue of AI. I think it is very important to commit to a transparent and ethical AI development, because this new era would demand a new leadership that will allow both human and artificial intelligence to flourish in harmony. So to do so, the human-centric approach is vital. And leaders need to first rethink their approach, the style. They may need to become more collaborative. It is important because, as Lori said, it is not a kind of silo, sitting in a kind of silo or working in silos. We will have to be much more open, because it has been said that routine tasks are taken by machines. So human will be freed up for more creative and strategic work. And it is very important to create an environment of open communication and idea sharing. And in this process, it is important for leaders to demonstrate emotional intelligence, as soft skill like creativity, empathy, and collaboration will be very more valued. And there are ways that should be identified because AI can remove bias from processes and create more inclusive workplace. So all those opportunities should be really taken in account to reduce bias in human decision making. Now, I remain convinced that there are fields in which really, as Paolo said, human interaction cannot be replaced. It is true. For example, when I reflect on my work with the communities, you have to sit down with communities, community members who are facing losses because of conflict. I cannot see how AI can replace me sitting there with the communities, taking people in my hands, try to really bring to them some compassion. So I think it is important to have really this very balanced development between the human interaction, the human capabilities, and those of the AI, because the AI is something indeed that would be very great in advancing some clusters of the human and society development.
Lori, we heard from the three of them, and now Aisha put it very, very clearly. The question of emotional intelligence is key. And then it's interesting, we're going to have a question about the emotional intelligence of AI, but that's for later. The question now is, how do we put emotional intelligence at the center? If that is, first of all, whether you agree with the fact that this is one of the forefront challenges in terms of the work of leadership, and if yes, how do we do that? How do we talk that kind of language in order to deal with the adaptive challenge?
Yeah, I agree for sure. Thank you. And I think that as everybody was speaking, one of the things that I was wondering, and I have some assumptions about this, is when we think about the decisions around AI and we talk about leadership and the leaders, I wonder who are in those rooms and who are at those tables. Because, Aisha said it perfectly, we need new leadership for this whole new frontier. And new leadership also is different leadership. And we still across the globe, I think, have a particular kind of leadership that's male dominated, that's white dominated, it's Christian dominated. I mean, we've got this perspective. And if we really want to lean in and make this address this adaptive challenge with a global perspective, putting kind of our arms around the whole world in a compassionate and emotionally intelligent way, we're going to make sure inside those rooms and at those tables are different looking leaders, not just doing the same things. And I think that's a huge barrier, unfortunately, is representation. And we saw that, you mentioned it briefly, with the facial recognition and the bias that was there, right? Which came up, and yet, great, thank you for taking that away, right? But for a while, that's an example, I think, of when we don't have representation and pause and take time to think about whose intelligence is informing artificial intelligence and what the AI is being based on. We're going to continue to have these biases and these exclusions. And so if we want to have new leadership, we need to make sure that we have different and new leadership around the table making those decisions. And I think that will help with emotional intelligence, because I think indigenous cultures, African cultures, Latin cultures, women, youth, we need to get those folks around those tables making decisions, because they do embody emotional intelligence in a different way. And they do lean into emotions and emotional regulation and resilience in a different way than what I would call traditional leadership. And I think that the danger is to not make traditional leadership bad, because that's where then we, get defensive. But it's saying, let's invite new leadership to the table, because then we can talk about emotions in a different, more freeing way, utilize emotions as a decision-making in a different way. For many groups of folks, many cultures, many operating systems, emotions is part of the operating system and decision-making. And so it would just bringing different people to the table is going to bring in a different level of emotional intelligence. But that causes, that requires us to kind of, again, really shift the structures of who are in the rooms and at the tables making the decisions around AI. And that's harder. That's a whole adaptive challenge in and of itself around leadership, which is who gets to do it and who's got the power. right? And so I think 100% yes to bringing in emotional intelligence and this new way of leadership and collaborative ideas and compassion. And we're finding there are many models of leadership and of being and thinking and decisions that show we can be compassionate and emotionally intelligent, and it doesn't sacrifice goals and productivity in the bottom line. We know we can do both. Right. And I think that's the invitation and the opportunity as we move into this uncharted territory, frontier of AI, is to be able to emerge both. And it's this, I read this article, I think it was in the Harvard Business Review, about how one of the things AI could do for leadership is take the hard skills, take the hard skills away from leadership and free some of that up, and then leave the soft skills for the humans. And I don't even call it soft skills. I think that's so diminishing, because those skills are the most difficult skills to do. So we call them human skills, which is ironic in what we're talking about, right? Because we're talking about the machines. Yeah, let the machines do, quote unquote, the hard stuff. Whatever. We need to do the human things, I think, which is what I shot to, and Paolo and Pierre Luigi. Everybody here is saying similar things. And that really that's the frontier, and that's going to be our adaptive challenge, I believe, as we move through this from a leadership lens.
It's interesting because when it comes to inclusivity, when it comes to participation, to allowing others to take part to the process, usually the stake is always the same, and we have to cut it differently in order to make justice. In this case, we are augmenting the cake. So it's like having another layer of opportunity in which we can do the work without having to sacrifice, but actually sharing the benefits and the rewards in a more just way, in a sense. Let me stop here for a moment and turn to Jafar, because we have we asked to the viewers that are following us on YouTube, and again, thank you everybody for taking part as listeners in this conversation, to send some questions in advance that allow us to convey them to you. Of course, we received many, and we had to select, but some of these reflect the kind of conversation we had, some less. So, Jafar, if you want to tap in with some of the questions,
Sure.
And your questions, of course, to the panel.
Sure. Thank you very much, Gabriel. Yes, just before we went on air, we had about 5,600 people registered to watch this panel. So, and many of them came with a lot of good questions. Unfortunately, we don't have time to address all their questions, but we've selected a few. Do we have time?
We have time. You can go ahead and we can
Okay.
start.
Okay. So,
of course, we all are gifted with the gift of synthesis, also our panelists, so we will try to do our best.
So we basically selected one question for each of the panelists. So to Paolo, human emotional intelligence and awareness plays a great role in leadership. Human emotional intelligence is based on our experiences and our responses. Will AI be able to develop such intelligence?
Well, the short answer is no. But the bad side of the answer is that the machine can imitate that. And the problem is, if the quality of the imitation will be too high to be distinguished by the human beings. And so probably we have to politically address this topic, making it visible and always recognizable by a human beings when the human beings is interacting with another human beings, or when there is a human-machine interaction. This is the core ethical point in this mixed society in which we can have machine that can imitate the human beings in a way that is really difficult to distinguish. And so this is important, because especially for the most vulnerable people around the world, means to not left anyone behind. Not one is less important than the other. So we can sleep well because we will never have a quotient machine, but we have to be really watchdog on how those machines will be deployed in the civil society.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Let me go to Lori. Lori, how should we consider the gender perspective when talking about leadership in the era of artificial intelligence?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, I think the gender perspective is a tough one because even right now across the world, we're unpacking and exploring what we even mean by that. And I think we've seen that that's come into conversation and confusion and exploration, which is a great thing. I think unpacking and understanding some of the gender stereotypes that we have ascribed to and kind of untangling ourselves from those stereotypes about what men are supposed to be and should be and what women are supposed to be and should be is freeing for all of us. I think if we could all exist with a little more freedom, then I think that would be better for everybody to kind of embrace their whole humanity and what they have. And by that, I mean things like, men are able to be more decisive and aggressive, and women are the ones that are loving and nurturing. We know women can be decisive and aggressive, and we know men can be loving and nurturing. So I think if we can unpack from some of those stereotypes as we move forward, it would be really useful. And so from that place, I think we need to make sure AI, as we're training it, teaching it, developing it, we're considering in the same way with the facial recognition, how does AI understand gender? How does AI understand man, woman, male, female, and all the things that we don't quite yet understand yet? And we are in the process of exploring that. And so just those questionings and considerations are critical. And I come back to, that's why we need women at the table, LGBTQ at the table, youth at the table, because we need to remember those perspectives, and we need to have that voice that says, hey, wait a minute. What's the impact of traditional femininity and how is that showing up here? And what's the impact of masculinity? And what about the LGBTQ and the youth? I mean, we just need to bring those perspectives and lived experiences and ideologies and concepts into the conversation. So as AI continues to unfold, those groups and those ideas are a part of it. And I think it's tricky because we're exploring now, as a humanity, and then AI is being crafted. So we need to make sure that we're doing it in the moment and not let that pass us by. It's a great question. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now let me go to Pierluigi. Question is, how can we plan to keep corporations accountable to prevent the mistakes that were made with the development of social media platforms when it comes to artificial intelligence?
That's another great question as well. And there's a lot to say about it. But being accountable means that you need that kind of regulation that I was telling before, and providers. So when I was explaining the different level of the supply chain, whether they are users, deployers, and then developers, and Microsoft, it could be it's a developer. I mean, it's the one that is, creating that model and integrate into a number of products and services. Could be a deployer at the same time. So we need to regulate all the levels. So if you are a developer and you have an infrastructure, your infrastructure, which is a data center, which is a cloud offer, needs to be regulated. You need to do things properly. Same as you could have attached some license just to make sure you can keep track of that. So there's a number of regulations that can be applied, but definitely you need to be accountable for all you're doing. And in the world as of today, you see numbers of AI regulation popping up everywhere. Interesting, with a very human-centric vision and defense of safety is in India, for example, that they put the AI Act in India, on top the concept of democratizing AI because of, good reason. I mean, it's one of the largest, if it's not the largest democracy in the world. And again, keeps accountability for who does what in every single process and level of engagement. Then, I mean, there are the regulations that promote the self-regulations aside. Not 100% sure is the right way. There are code of conducts as well, but the ultimate judge of all we produce and put in the market are the user in general. And in the digital sector, users, surfers, if it's internet, they're the best judges ever because they can pull you out so fast for good, and I think it's a good thing. So it's fine that it's produced by some top corporations or top interest somehow, but then the ultimate decision maker is the user, is the consumer, is our customers on the daily basis, and that's the best judges ever.
Great, thank you, Pierluigi. Now the last question goes to Aishatu. Now you've been working, you have a long experience in the UN. What kind of support do you think can artificial intelligence give to the work of the UN in the field? I think you did make a reference to cutting down on the bureaucracy, which I 100% agree with you, and in the area of human resources. But let's say in some of the areas that you work in, peace and security and so forth, do you see any role for artificial intelligence?
You're muted.
You're mute.
Thank you very much.
Yes, in the field of peacekeeping, I see two areas where artificial intelligence can be of great support. The first one is with regard to monitoring, because one of our mandate when we were working in peacekeeping is to monitor, the hate speeches, the media that can trigger the conflicts. So, as I told you, during my tenure in the UN, artificial intelligence was not that developed. But now, when I look at it, I am very sure that it can be of great support, because 2 years ago, we were working on a project. And the project, the main objective of the project is monitoring what is said on social media with regard to policies implemented in the country. So I was amazed to see the capabilities of the algorithms on these issues. They can go and look what is it is been said in the conversations on all the social media, and the algorithm can even identify the emotion of people. Are they happy with the policy implemented? Or they unhappy? Or I don't know, all the emotions. So I am sure that this can be of great help for the UN in the implementation of the monitoring. So the other area is with regard to the security. When I was working in Darfur, we had a lot of areas where the conflicts unfold, but where the government prevent us to go. So with those, these, how do you call them? The drones. The drones would have been of great help, because the militaries, the police, and the civil personnel of the mission cannot go, but I think that the drones would have been of great help to see what is going on, and also to monitor the human rights violations. So I think on those two areas, it is important for the UN to develop the capabilities to support the peacekeeping missions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jafar. Let me if I may, let me tap on
I was
this.
going to say that I'm going to ask myself a question.
Yeah,
You
which is going to
Go
come
ahead.
in a moment. But before that, I want to ask an extra question, since we have a little bit of time,
Sure.
to the panel, and precisely to Paolo, with the forgiveness of the others, because we were supposed to have here today the chef de cabinet of the Secretary General, who was going to give us a little bit of a larger perspective of what is the agenda of the Secretary General on the issue of AI and the challenge, but he's not here, and I'm not asking Paolo, of course, to do the same, definitely, but you are part of this group, which is the advisory committee of the Secretary General on the development of AI. And since a lot of our audience comes from the UN system, perhaps they would like to know a little bit what is that you guys are trying to look into, and also what is your opinion about that? Are we doing enough as the UN system? There's never enough. I understand the question is not right, but are we going in the right direction from your point of view?
Well, Gabriele, the question could be a little bit inconvenient for me in the sense that I absolutely, like you said, I don't want to express any reflection that could be addressed to the SG. But what I can witness is the commitment of the Secretary General. And that is something that could be really impressive because, you know, you can see the most high level in the United Nations that look at the issues that we are talking now and commit the structure to try to find something that could become in the future a political agreement, a global political agreement. Of course, this is not our duty. We are simple 38 experts that try to put on the table the different approach, the plural and different approach that they have working with AI. And what I can tell you is that the group is really diverse, more women than men. Western is not the core of the groups. And so that makes me full of hope in that sense, if I can tell you that, because there is the private sector, but there is also the public sector, this is the civil society. There is also space for someone like me that I don't know how to define myself, but okay, if you look at the AI, I'm a little bit strange guys in the circus. And so this is, you know, something that gives us the idea how complex and big is our world and how complex and big is the issues that the United Nations would like to take along. And the idea to make it in this way and to share it, to find in the next month the biggest possible confrontation, agreement, and dissemination on this kind of instruments that we try to offer to the General Secretary, okay, that will be one of the point, one of the challenge. Now, let me tell you that tomorrow will be the day after tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow I will fly. The day after tomorrow will be the first day in which we will meet in person after working together for 1 month. And I'm really excited by the climate that we can find, you know. We are going to New York, we are going to the glass building. We know that the world is looking at us and what we can offer to all the world to better reflect like we did this evening on this kind of topics. So there are big preface. I hope that will be also a big conclusion on that. But in the meantime, there is all this story to be written.
Thank you very much, Paolo. And that takes us back to what we were saying about with Laurie, what is adaptive leadership. And one element of adaptive leadership is the capacity to orchestrate the different energies, the different capacities, the different perspectives that you have at the table to embrace and confront with the adaptive challenges. And what you just described sounds very much into that direction. So thank you very much for that overview. And in the same way, I'm asking the last but not least question to Jafar, our director of the Staff College, because when it comes to orchestrating energies and orchestrating our capacity to confront the challenge, how can the UNSSC, as one of the actors, best contribute to the task of advancing leadership in the age of AI for the UN system and not only?
Sure. Thank you very much, Gabriel. Well, you know, the mission of the Staff College is to share ideas, knowledge, different ways of looking at topics and issues, build capabilities, capacities of UN staff, but not just UN staff, whoever works with the UN, from the NGO community to private sector and so forth, through all kinds of learning programs, courses, and so forth, to really understand the challenges that the UN is facing, global challenges. And I think, you know, what we had today, an hour and a half, is a demonstration of what the Staff College can do. I think we need to make people within the UN, outside the UN, to really understand these very complicated, complex issues. For example, artificial intelligence, I learned so much today. It's not going to go away. It's not something that we have to be afraid of in terms of taking people's jobs. You know, we have to understand how to work with it. And it's only going to get sharper and better over the course of time. We know it has a lot of shortcomings and weaknesses currently, but as leaders, people have to learn how to use it to benefit the world that they're living in. I think these kind of events is something that the Staff College is doing on various topics, and we should be doing more and more when it comes to this particular topic of artificial intelligence. Because as I said, this is today and the future, and we as the UN staff should know how to work with it.
Thank you very much. So let me thank you. Thanks to the panelists, but again to you, the last word of the day, Jafar. So we close up this session, and my personal thanks to everybody who have intervened today. But over to you, Jafar.
Sure. Thank you very much. I really wanted to thank our great panel and wonderful panelists to share with us your time, your thoughts on these issues. I personally have learned a lot, and I'm sure that many of our participants who have stayed throughout the whole event also have learned quite a bit from your very insightful ideas, thoughts, and views. Really appreciate it. Thank you. I also wanted just to take this opportunity to thank my dear friend Gabriel Segre for being such a wonderful moderator. We are going to call you back, hopefully soon, in 2024, to help us with another event. I also wanted to thank my colleagues, a large number of colleagues who worked in the background from the technical side, from the communication side, and everybody who really has helped us to bring this event together. And stay in tune with the Staff College. We try to sort of put out events that are of relevance, but are also interesting and important to all of you. We have all kinds of social media on X, on Instagram, on Facebook, and better to visit us on our website, unssc.org. And let me stop here. Wish everybody season's greetings, and hope to see you all again next year. Thank you, and thank you all.
Thank you.